Look, I want you to see this. This is you, right here. Notch 45, you Irish bug bastard.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back once again to Hot Toys Hotline. As always, if you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel and drop a like on this video. I would very much appreciate it. Well, guys, as you can see in front of me here, I do have the Present Toys New York Butcher. But if you see my previous video, I did review the SP48 variant. This is now the SP49, the red coat version. So if that's the version you want to see, you are here watching the correct video. As I mentioned in the previous video, this is very similar packaging. We're going to take a quick tour once again. As you can see, we have that beautiful image there of Daniel Day-Lewis as Bill the Butcher on the front, with the rest of the gang hanging out in the background and that American flag theme there. We have Present Toys up in the top left corner, the New York Butcher branding in red, white, and blue, of course, here towards the bottom. 1/6 scale collectible figure. We have the New York Butcher font once again on the bottom of the box as well. Moving around to the side, again, the exact same box if you saw my previous review of the other version. And moving around to the back, as I mentioned previously, the only thing separating the packaging between the two is that sticker there. Of course, this one indicating the SP49 version, which is the red coat version. But now, as always, guys, let me take the foam inserts out of the packaging and we'll see how it arrives to you when it lands on your doorstep. Okay, and as you can see, here are all of the accessories in the foam inserts that I just pulled out of the art box that I just showed you. But now, let me take the figure and all of the accessories out of these inserts and let's take a closer look at all of the details. Really quickly, here are all the accessories laid out on the table in front of me. I want to point out, guys, if you saw my previous review of the other version of Bill the Butcher, all of the accessories apart from this hat are exactly identical, so you're really going to be watching the same thing twice, so feel free to skip through this if you've already seen my first review. But if you haven't, guys, stick with me. Now we're going to take a look at each accessory individually. Do you hear that? Well, first things first, guys, let's get the hands out of the way. As I always say, I want to see a bare minimum of 8 hands total. Unfortunately, with this one, we get 4 extras and 2 pre-installed on the figure. Not good enough in my opinion. I know Present Toys can do better. I do want to point out, though, these are very nicely painted as we get closer up on them. Nicely sculpted as well. These look to be the exact same extra hands that came with the other version of the figure. No surprise there, considering all of the accessories are a crossover. And as you can see, all of these hands are different types of gripping hands. You have a more loose grip, a more tight grip, obviously made to hold the pipe or any of the knives or anything. Definitely really nicely done, especially for a third-party figure. I think Present Toys is getting much, much better with the paint work and the sculpt work. Overall, once again, I would just like to see more in the hand department because it just kind of limits the poses you can do when you don't have that many hands included. So definitely overall satisfied, but wish they gave us a little bit more. Next, I wanted to show the display base. This is the exact same display base that comes with the other version. Once again, I really do love that silhouette there of Bill the Butcher's hat with the Gangs of New York font in it. I think that's very neat overall. It's a very basic display base, a small oval shape as they typically do, but with a decal on the top. No complaints personally from me. I'm happy with how it looks. Next, we do have our severed pig head here, a present from Bill himself, as you can see. Says today from Bill. Now this little nail and this piece of paper here are separate and a little baggy, as you saw in the beginning accessory portion. There is a little pinhole inside of there to stick the nail into. Just be very careful. It's a softer plastic, so I noticed it wanted to bend a little bit as I was pushing it in. So be very careful with that. Before we fully take a look at the head here, I do want to point out it does come with this wooden tray here that the head is meant to sit into. I mentioned this in my previous video. I don't think this all brown wood is entirely accurate. However, it is made of wood, which is really nice to see, and overall I think it gets the job done, and the head will just sit in that tray in your display. So definitely really cool that they included that. Let's take a quick look at the sculpt and paint work here on the pig. If you don't like gruesome bloody stuff, skip over this part because it's very bloody towards the back. As you can see, there's even some gloss on the eyeballs there. Very nicely done overall. Once again, guys, as you move around the back, you can see the insides of the head where it was severed from the body. But it's really cool how they painted it to look like bloody and gory there. Overall, I think it gets the job done. The sculpt work on this head is very nicely done, and overall, I'm pretty happy with this. I know a lot of people probably won't use this accessory who don't like gory stuff in their display, but I think it looks pretty good overall. Next, short and sweet, we do have the pipe here. I'll back up a little bit so you can see how small it really is. I didn't show this in the previous video. There's a little bit of black paint in there to kind of make it look like it's deeper than it actually is on the inside because it's not hollowed out. But overall, not much to say about it. It's painted white. It's sculpted decent enough. It's Bill the Butcher's pipe. And here we have the whiskey or bourbon glass here. As you can see, there is clear resin on the inside to make it look real. You can almost see my reflection there, which is pretty cool. Really nicely done overall. I do think this is the exact same one that came with Jack Torrance, if not very, very similar. But I have no complaints about that. At the end of the day, it's just a glass of liquor, and I think it looks pretty good and very convincing in my opinion. Next, we have our club here. Now, this one is more fitting with this figure versus the other figure because this does come with the other figure as well. And again, I do think this is the club that he hit the politician in the head with, and he says, "Notch 45." This is really cool. The details sculpted into the wood are really nicely done overall. Could the paint be slightly better? Sure, but I really have no complaints about it. I think it's pretty cool myself. I don't know if I'll ever pose him with this, but I think it's nice that it's included. And again, we do have a real fabric strap here. It appears to be some sort of pleather or synthetic material or possibly even leather. Not too sure. They don't mention it in the description, but overall, I think this is pretty cool, and there's an idea of scale as you see it in my hands there. Next, we have our we have our top hat here, guys. Yeah, once again, guys, not totally satisfied with how this looks. The ribbon sculpting looks really, really odd to me. It looks super chunky. I mean, I don't know what ribbon is that chunky on the side there. If we get a little bit closer, you can see there's some nice sculpted in detail, but it really ends there for me. I know it's going to look really goofy on the figure. You can see there's that kind of mold release there on the bottom. Kind of looks like a, I don't know. But yeah, guys, overall, not satisfied at all. I will be getting a third-party custom option for these hats. And once again, I will let you guys know and show you guys these custom hats once I get them in. Not going to gatekeep that from you. I just want to make sure that it's nice once I get it in, and I'll share that with you guys. But overall, not happy with this at all, and it's just as bad as what we saw with the previous version of this character from Present Toys. And last but certainly not least, for the accessories, once again, as I mentioned if you saw the previous video, the best accessory by far is the knife belt here. If we get closer, it's just really nicely done. It's beautifully stitched. We have die cast and wood weapons here. They look great. They all remove. Now, I will point out, guys, if you have this accessory in hand, the knives are kind of tight in there, so you really have to be careful and pull at it. I recommend holding the bottom here, getting a firm grip, and then pulling the blade out. Trust me when I say they all remove. They're just very tight in there. I guess they put them in there and stitched around them, perhaps. But just keep that in mind, guys. You do have to be very careful when pulling them out, but they do all remove. Give me 1 second, though. Let me remove a few of them and once again show you what they look like outside of the holster belt here. And here we are with some of our blades pulled out of the holsters. Now, as you can see, guys, these are really beautifully done. I'm very impressed with Present Toys on these accessories. If we get closer up, you can see there's ground-in edges on all the blades. It kind of has that worn look to the metal. Again, as I mentioned in the previous video, the scales feel like real wood to me. If not, they look very convincing as real wood. Overall, I'm very pleased with not only the look, but the choice of materials here from Present Toys. I think these look fantastic, and they really look awesome displaying them with this figure. And of course, with this version in particular, you have to have the cleaver because that's what he throws into the politician's back and then finishes them off with that club that we saw earlier. So definitely really great to see. But guys, now without further ado, let me grab the Present Toys SP49 Bill the Butcher with the red coat, and let's see what we think of the figure. Okay, now here we are with a full-bodied look at Bill the Butcher with the red coat here. Now let's just move him around so we can get an idea of the cut and sew and the proportions and everything. Definitely, again, really nicely done in terms of the body they chose for the proportions. A very tall-looking figure overall. You know, Daniel Day-Lewis is a tall man, and I think they did a good job in choosing a body for this one. Now guys, I want to get a little bit closer so you can get an idea of the tailoring on the coat. I do want to point out I'm not totally satisfied with how the tailoring on the coat looks. It looks a little too big and a little too baggy towards the bottom. Also, the color red isn't quite what it looks like in the film. The red in the film looks kind of a bit closer to burgundy, kind of in between this color and burgundy. At the end of the day, it is a third-party figure, so I know we're not going to expect ultimate accuracy, but I just wanted to point that out once again. I do think it's a little bit loose looking. Of course, your posing will also play into that as well. You can kind of pull it closer to the body and get it looking a little bit better, but I just wanted to point that out. Now guys, I don't want to keep you waiting any longer. I know you want to look at this head sculpt. I think I kept you waiting a little bit longer in the other video. But as you can see here, guys, I think this is a beautiful looking head sculpt. Now, the one thing I do want to point out with this as well, and I'll get even closer, just like the other version, as you can see, you do have separations for those little curls on the end of the mustache. And I think on this one in particular, it's even more obvious. You can see here on the right side how far up that separation goes. At certain angles, it looks a little goofy. You know, not to knock the actual sculpt itself, and again guys, I know that this is a recast of a custom sculpt. It's a beautiful looking head sculpt. It looks just like Daniel Day-Lewis in my opinion. I love that sinister smile. I think I actually prefer this sculpt between the two figures. Again, I just wanted to point out the mustache separations there are a little goofy looking. Further back, as you can see, it's not nearly as noticeable, but as you get closer and closer, and when you look at it in person, you will notice it. Moving around though, just to show you the hair sculpt and everything, I think that looks pretty solid. A little bit chunky in the back, but overall, I have very little complaints about that. I think it looks pretty fantastic. Just overall, guys, the mustache thing is a little puzzling to me. It must have been something to do with their molding process and how they were capable of doing it. But again, definitely looks a little odd at certain angles, but the sculpt itself looks great. And once again, I mentioned about the other sculpt. I want to get even closer. That dead eye that Bill the Butcher has, which has that little eagle piece of metal inside of it, it doesn't quite show here in the eyes. It more just looks like a blind eye. Not a huge deal to me because the eye really is so squinted. Maybe that's why they didn't really feel the need to make it that detailed, but overall I just wanted to point that out. Now backing up the figure again, guys, of course I'm going to move the coat out of the way so we can see the details on that undercoat there. And I think it's really nicely done. You can see some beautiful detail there done in terms of the printing on this undercoat here. We do have a real metal chain there going from the middle to the pocket. Really nicely done overall. I have really little complaints about how the clothing looks on either of these figures. Moving down to those watermelon skin looking pants there. Nicely done. I think they sit nice on the legs there. As you can see, they're really closely tailored to the body, which is kind of quite the opposite here from what we see with this coat. Once again, I want to show you guys, it's a bit loose, as you could see. But overall, I really don't have that many complaints about the tailoring on the rest of the clothing. As we get further down, you can see the shoes here. Again, we do have a seam line on the side of the shoes. These appear to be the exact same shoes from the previous figure, just painted brown. And we don't have those metal eyelets here on the front either. So same shoes, different paint job. You get the point. As you can see, we do have some weathering on the bottom of these as well. Definitely looking pretty decent overall. Just once again, guys, the proportions on the coat are just a little bit odd to me, but definitely not the end of the world because you can certainly make it look as long as you're posing it the proper way. So really quickly though, off camera, let me grab this hat here and I want to see what it looks like on this sculpt. And as you can see, guys, it is goofy as ever. A lot of people, you guys heard my joke earlier, the Willy Wonka joke I made. Definitely a bit unfortunate how thick they sculpted that ribbon there. I kind of hoped that they would use a real ribbon on this, but unfortunately they did not. As you can see, it's fully sculpted in. It looks very goofy. This version is the one that I will be running this top hat on, so I'm definitely very interested to see the third-party option that I'll have coming very soon. I'll back it up there so you guys can see, and again, I'll open up the coat here so you get an idea of what everything looks like. Overall, a solid-looking figure. Just take this hat off, find something different, or, you know, maybe you don't care as much as I do about the hat. This character is very, very important to me. This is one of my favorite movies ever, one of my favorite actors ever. So for me, I'm willing to spend a little bit extra money to get a better hat because I just love this character so much. And once again, the overall package, guys, is looking really nice. Now quickly, we'll go through the articulation. Of course, you have very easy full rotation on the head sculpt, forward and backward. With this one as well, guys, you do have a rubber neck, so you can pose that a little bit, just be very careful. Of course, we have a full 90-degree bend, even with this coat on, very little restriction there in the shoulder. We have a double jointed elbow as well, and you can butterfly it out very easily. In terms of the hand articulation, full rotation, and of course you could take advantage of that rocker ball joint to move it forward and backward. Also, there is very little restriction in the front of the coat when raising the arm forward and backward. Definitely very little complaints about that. If the body's the same, the abdomen will be restricted. This one doesn't feel quite as restricted, believe it or not, than the other one. That's very surprising to me, but overall this is more of a solid abdomen because of the height of the figure. In terms of the bend here at the waist, just like the other version, the pants are really going to be what restricts you. Be very careful not to tear the seam or anything. You really don't have to push this character too far. He doesn't get into too crazy positions in the film. And then, of course, with the shoes, you really have no restriction whatsoever. As you can see, there's a visible ball joint underneath when you don't have the pants pulled up. But you can get really whatever you want in terms of posability out of those feet. But now, guys, as always, let me throw the figure in a couple poses, and we'll close out this video, and I'll share my final thoughts. Big shout out, as always, to 1/6 Kit for getting this figure to me quickly and in great shape. I very much appreciate it. In terms of this figure, guys, I'm overall very pleased with it. Apart from my issues with the hat, those little pieces on the mustache and the coat, it's a great option for Bill the Butcher. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I am out.